Good morning, drummers of the Drumset Artistry Mastermind group. This is an awesome drum set group. In fact, there's so many cool pictures. I want to thank each one of you who are participants in the group for submitting photos of your drum kits. It's really fun to see everybody's unique setup. Today, I'm going to talk about the self-taught approach to drumming versus a private teacher. So before I get into a little bit more about the importance of getting help in the journey, how many of you went to school? How many of you had a teacher that really inspired you? I'm sure you've had a teacher you didn't like, but generally speaking, most of us in our education have some kind of teacher that's really inspiring, that has taught us quite a lot about what we're passionate about, and even taught us to appreciate subjects that maybe we at first didn't like or didn't know we didn't like. So for me, I started out on 6th grade band on snare drum, got real bored, didn't really know what I was doing, just kind of blending with the crowd, so fake it till I make it kind of vibe. Didn't feel confident in my abilities. And then I started taking drum lessons in 7th grade. This changed my world. I had a teacher that was really just giving me all kinds of excellent guidance. It was funny because my first drum teacher was a guy that I was his first student. So this was a first for both of us. And I shared in a previous video that I met him, as he was the older brother to my sister's best friend. And we did everything percussion standing up. I was in school band, as I mentioned. And so as a percussionist, you stand and play the snare drum or the concert bass drum or the timpani or the mallet instruments like bells and so on. And then when we played drum set, of course, we would sit down. So for 2 years, I had a weekly lesson. And I remember practicing very hard and being so proud of my ability to go in and have somewhat mastered the lesson as best as I could. And he was very encouraging. In fact, after 2 years, he just sort of dumped me. One day he said, well, I've been teaching you for 2 years. I've taught you just about everything I know, and it's time for you to find a new teacher. What happened is that the next 2 years, I stopped working at the drums. In fact, my mom even made a comment once, you don't seem to be practicing anymore. Well, because there was no guidance, there was no inspiration, there was no direction. I mean, imagine if you didn't go to school. You would not know how to read, perhaps not know how to write. You would be considered an illiterate human being. Literature, inability to read books and converse the way most of us do. I don't think that's the case. I think most everybody in this group's pretty literate. But my point is imagine that same overlay with drumming. Let's say you didn't have any teachers and you're a do-it-yourselfer. So you're going to watch a bunch of YouTube videos, which are helpful. I have a whole bunch on my YouTube channel called Drumset Artistry. So you're welcome to go to that. But I remember when I was a freshman in college, didn't have a drum set teacher. I was studying snare drum because you study percussion in college. So this is when I was getting my bachelor's in music percussion performance. Though there's a lot of percussion, I'm a drummer primarily. I love the drum set. It's my favorite of all the instruments. But I can remember watching this video with my favorite drummer at the time, which was Steve Gadd. I couldn't figure out how in the heck that guy could do what he was doing. In fact, I remember being so frustrated. It's just like, where's a teacher? Because I had learned so much from my teacher in middle school. And I actually had a teacher in late high school. And that was a very good experience because I got really excited by having lessons again. And I was working on rudiments and chops and samba beats and stuff that he taught me. And I even got the John Philip Sousa Award in my band, which was kind of a fun thing. And then I actually won a drum set competition as a senior in high school. That's how hard I started working. But then with no drum set instruction in early college, I was back to my kind of floundering about what am I going to practice. And so I would go watch the Steve Gadd video over and over. And I remember telling people, man, I would give $1,000 if someone could teach me how to play like Steve Gadd. And I really felt that way because his playing just touched me in a way that was like super inspiring. Well, then I took a lesson with another teacher that was more experienced at the college. And I asked him this question, what is it about Steve Gadd's playing that's so amazing? And he told me two things. He said, well, first of all, I think he had the best hands. And I actually went back to graduate school and studied with a teacher who studied with John Beck, the Eastman School professor who taught Steve Gadd. And so he told me the story about how he asked John Beck, what was it about Steve Gadd? And then John Beck said, he just had the best hands. His hands were just so fluid. His upbringing was he would play with 45 RPM military march records after dinner on a practice pad with his uncle. So instead of video gaming, he was actually practicing for entertainment. And that's kind of like my past, because I grew up out in the country. We had one TV channel, no friends around. So I just spent a lot of time behind the drums in what my professor in college would call creative loneliness, where you lock yourself away from the socialization of all the stuff out there in the world, and you just spend time in the practice room. So I asked this guy, and then he said, of course, he had the best hands. And then the other thing he said that was really amazing, he said, I really think he got into Latin. And I went, that's it. Steve Gadd was really famous for this groove called the Mozambique, which he used Paul Simon many years ago on a track. And there was something mysterious and very amazing about his playing. And it was this whole other ingredient that was not in my listening diet. In fact, I like to say, you are what you eat. We've heard that. You are what you listen to. So if you start listening to some different drummers, you're going to get some different ideas, but you still could be like clueless as to how to get there. Now, there are books. I think a lot of developing drummers are really resistant to looking at books. Maybe it's because it's too much like school where you had textbooks, but I didn't like school textbooks, but I sure liked drum books. In fact, it's almost embarrassing to admit that I've been involved in over 100 different books. I've been through probably 7 Latin books. I mean, I could make a huge list. I actually took the list off of my website because I felt like it was intimidating to people. My point in telling you this is that there'd be no way that I could be where I'm at in my drumming if I didn't have teachers. Now, I've taught myself a lot of things, but it's really because I've gotten some clarity on how to go about doing that from some guidance from my professors. In fact, the most inspiring person in my life when I was younger was the college professor I studied with named John Mallard. I mentioned I have some books published. One of them is on big band drumming, and I've actually dedicated that book to this gentleman because he knew so much. I mean, he was like the Obi-Wan Kenobi of music and drumming. And I remember thinking, if I could know as much as that man, I would really feel like I've arrived. And so this is the reason I teach. I was so inspired, something about giving to people personally. In fact, I asked this question often. I said, I'll give you 2 choices. Here's choice 1. Choice 1 is you go to a concert. Let's say go see Neil Peart with Rush. That would be fabulous. That would be a great event, and you might even learn some cool stuff. Choice 2 is you sit in a practice room with Neil Peart and you ask him questions on how he arrived at his drum parts for the Rush songs. Now, I'm guessing that probably most of you would go with option 2, as you'd rather be there talking to him. This is why I teach. I feel like I have the greatest impact on somebody when I can sit on the internet or in my studio live here and show them what it is that they don't understand. Help them break through their frustrations and their limiting beliefs. That's a big part of what I do in my teaching practice with my clients, is I really work on positive headspace, strategies, how to plan the work, how to work the plan, and diagnose all kinds of problems, whether it's right hand, right foot, left foot. In fact, I can tell a lot about how knowledgeable a drummer is just by looking at their drum setup. Unlike any other instrument, typically pianos and keyboards or guitars and wind instruments, and I mentioned this in a previous video, they're all built to a specific size, and you have to adjust your body to the dimensions of the instrument and where things are located. But with the drum set, it's so highly personal. There's a lot of things about setting up a drum that drummers don't really know. They just haven't been down the journey. And so maybe you're one of those kind of students that is afraid to ask for help. Maybe you were one of those students in school that didn't raise your hand even though you had a question because you were afraid that somebody might say something negative or make fun of you. None of that happens around here. We're all on our own personal journeys. We all have our own limiting beliefs, our own frustrations. And my job is to help you break through those limiting beliefs and also to show you how to reach your drumming goals. So that's what I wanted to convey today, is that if you're in that position where you're tired of taking the long road and just self-help this and self-help that with videos, most of the clients I have, trust me, believe I'm an expert, and know that I can assist them in being able to cut through any of their limiting thoughts and especially improving their drumming. In fact, if you have limiting beliefs, then your drumming is going to be limited. You really can only go so far in your outer drumming world, depending upon how much clarity you have on your inner drumming world. So if you're ready to kick your drumming into high gear, you want to overcome your limiting beliefs, then don't hesitate to private message me. That's why I'm here. I'm your Drumset mindset coach, and I'm very confident that whatever the circumstances are, I can assist you to improve your drumming and help you to overcome any personal limiting beliefs you have about your abilities, and make you realize and feel comfortable getting some guidance so you can become really a drumming literate master and know a lot about technique, coordination, reading, listening, transcribing. I mean, the list goes on. So whatever it is you need help with, you can count on me. So reach out to me if you'd like. And I will be back on Monday at 2:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to do another Facebook Live post. Keep the questions coming. I'm going to be doing some forthcoming videos on setup and some things of that nature that I mentioned. Until then, keep practicing, be nice to yourself, and hang in there on this journey. And I will see you in the very near future. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.